we began a new series last week titled The Crown and the Towel. And so we started this series about servanthood, servant leadership. And so being the hands and feet of Jesus to the people around us in the church, and how Jesus really commissioned us to be this exact thing. And that's important. I did say a word, and I said it on purpose, and it's the word commissioned. Because Jesus didn't give us an option to be servants. He commanded us to be servants. And so it'll be really important, and we're going to hit on that really heavily later on this morning. And so, but I wanted to start with a story. I wasn't going to tell this story, and then I randomly started telling Benjamin and I think it was Greg up in the sound booth earlier this morning about something that I ended up doing, but it fits because our title of our message today is The King of Compassion. And so, because the first week we talked about humility. Humility is needed when it comes to servanthood, right? Jesus had to be humble. He had to get down on his knees to wash the disciples' feet. Okay, and when we talked at that time, that's the bottom of the totem pole. There's nothing lower than that. The people who are shoveling pig poop out of the stalls have a higher level of authority than the person washing someone's feet. And so Jesus had to have a large amount of humility to be in that position. And so this week we're talking about compassion. Humility is not the only thing that's important. We need to have compassion for the people that we're being humble with, and that we're serving. And so my story today is twofold. I'm going to tell both stories, I suppose. So when I was 18, I had the privilege, my best friend and I, at our church, of being what we called the athletic directors of our church. Were we a 1,000-person church? No. Was that really a title? No. I think they gave it to us because we both liked sports and said we were willing to put together events. And so we wanted to do, like, we did 3 times a year, we did a flag football game, and I'm talking 50 people from the church would come out. It was a huge outreach. People outside of the church would come and play and all these things. It was a really fun time. However, we also decided one year, let's start a church softball league. Like, let's join us church softball league. And, so what happened was we had multiple people in the church show up, and then we had some people that, probably shouldn't be playing softball. Let's just be honest. Well, one of them, our lead pastor, he was about 70 at the time, decided he wanted to come out, and he's like, I'll just pitch. I can't get hurt pitching. I can't. He's kind of athletic enough, like he's still walking and capable, and so he's like, I'll come out and I'll pitch. And so it's slow pitch, so it's super easy. He has to make it to the home plate. That's it. That's the only objective he needs. And I told him, well, do you really think this is a good idea, though? I said, listen, some people are going to hit some heaters coming off there, and what happens if they hit you? I'm like, are you going to be able to get out? He's like, I can get out of the way, Cody. And I'm like, I get it. I'm 18. I don't know better. And so I'm like, okay. And, the first batter went up. They hit it, whatever, moved on. I'm up. We're in practice. First practice. I've never played softball before. I did play baseball when I was younger. Can't be any different. It's not. It's a lot easier, actually, to be able to hit a ball. And he comes, he winds up his first pitch to me. I hit it, beeline, and it dings him in the shin, knocks him on his butt, and hits him in the shin. And it was quite an extensive injury, when I mean that it had riddled him for years, at least a significant period of time, because he had some issues with it and couldn't walk right on it. And when I say swollen, it was about the size of a softball on his shin. Like, it was huge. Like, it was that big. And I was like, holy cow. And so, all right, anyways, now we're going to skip forward a couple years. In 2020, I was their children's pastor now. Same lead pastor. My lead pastor had for years, he would travel around the state of Ohio, and he did a lot of dramas and things like that. And he was really well known throughout the state of Ohio in the Assemblies of God. A lot of people knew who he was because he would travel and he would do these dramas. And I'm talking like really good plays and things like that. Well, he did a Good Friday service, and he wanted to do a drama of Jesus going on the cross, and he just kind of preaches and tells the story while he is being Jesus. And so he needed one other person for this thing, and so he chose me as the children's pastor, of course, and he needed me to be the Roman soldier, and so he gave me a whip. I'm sure you know where this is going. And so he gave me a whip, And it's now, if you know anything about the actual whip Jesus got hit with, it had little bear claw teeth on it that would then hit the skin, and when they pulled it, ripped it off. He didn't give me that. But what he did give me was one that had the multiple threads and all those things, and it was rough. And so he went. Man, Jesus, take the wheel. Yes. No. So he hands me the whip, and he says, okay, now don't hit me with full force, and don't not hit me. He said, I want you to actually touch me with the tassels. And I said, that doesn't seem like a good idea. He's like, I've done it for years. I've never been hurt. I'm like, okay. And he's like, what you need to do is overemphasize it. He's like, you really got to make the reaction strong. So he's like, we're getting ready to walk down the aisle. Now, this is in practice. This wasn't, thankfully, in front of anyone. And he went, you just got to kind of go like, ha! And I'm like, well, I just can't really do that. I'm like, I just feel like this looks so fake. And so I'm like, okay, I got it. He said, just, no, wait. He said, I don't care how you do it, as long as it's just not, you're not hitting me. I'm like, okay, understood. And so instead of going, huh, I went, huh. And if you didn't notice, there's a lot more speed going down. And I went like this, and man, I kid you not, I smacked, and it went. And he went straight to the ground. And he went, oh! And at first I was giggling because I thought he was like pretending. Like I thought he was just messing around. Really, he's a good actor. I was like, okay. But he's like, oh! And then he looks at me, he said, I told you light, or whatever. And I'm like, oh, are you okay? And he said, oh, just give me a minute. And I'm like, I was sitting there, I was like borderline crying because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just hurt him. I was moved with so much compassion. I was like, I am so sorry. I'm like, I didn't mean to. I told you this was a bad idea. And so, needless to say, the play went on. I was still a part of the play, thankfully. But I just did not really swing at all. I just went and just moved down the line. And and we didn't even get to the hammer part. That came later. He also had me at a hammer. And so I think he purposely made me do it different than everybody else, because normally I think he had him near his hands, whereas he had me go back a foot and then smack the ground. That way I wouldn't come close to him. But no, so I tell you that story because, as funny as it is, I was moved with compassion for him because I felt like I genuinely hurt him so much. I was like, I am so worried. And to me, I had a history of hurting him. I'm like, I got to stop. Like, it's not getting any better. I just keep on doing it. And so I felt so sorry for him in the moment. And I was moved with so much compassion that I was almost at tears myself, thinking, I cannot believe I just hurt the person that I look at as my leader. This is terrible that I would do this to him. And so I tell you that story as we move on in our text today. If you recall, we are in John 13. We're going to look shortly at John today, just verses 14 through 16. So John 13, 14 to 16. And then we're going to move into Luke, which is our main text today. But I will go over this real quickly because then I got a lot of things to give to you before we get to our main text. And it says this, in John 13, verses 14 through 16. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. We spent a lot of time in this last week because we talked about the humility that comes from that, right? Because he says that no one is greater than anyone else. No one. There's no title. There's no position. There's nothing that makes you greater than someone else. We are all the same level. Therefore, we should serve one another. And so that's what we talked about last week. But what's so important is, as we're talking about compassion, he's saying, I've set an example for you. And he says, I've washed your feet, so you should also wash one another's. And he's saying, do this as I've done. And what's really coming from this is he's saying you need to serve other people with a heart that's willing to serve people. So humility is important. You need to have the humility to actually do the act, but you need to have the heart that's willing to do it. Right? That's extremely important. That's just as important as being able to not think of yourself in a prideful way and say that's below me. So that's important, but then it's also important to actually, care about the very thing you're doing. You're not doing it out of regret. You're not doing it out of feeling like you're pressured. You're not doing it out of spite or any of those things. You're doing it because you love people and you have the love of God in your heart. Now, when we talk about compassion, and the reason why we've titled today The King of Compassion, because the greatest teacher is the one who actually models what they teach, right? Well, Jesus modeled compassion a lot throughout Scripture. Specifically, we're going to mention 3 different instances where Jesus modeled compassion. The first one is in Luke 7:11 through 17. You don't need to turn there. I'm going to explain it as we go. But Luke 7:11 through 17, for those of you note takers. And this time, Jesus resurrects the widow's son of Nain. And Luke 7:11 through 17, he resurrects the widow's son. You're like, well, what about compassion there? Verse 13 said, when the Lord saw her, he was moved with compassion for her and said to her, do not cry. And then he resurrected her son. The leper who was rejected by society in Mark 1:40 through 45. In verse 40, he says, a man with leprosy came and knelt in front of Jesus, begging to be healed. If you are willing, you can heal me and make me clean. He said, moved with compassion, Jesus reached out and touched him. I am willing, he said, be healed. Mark 10:46 through 52, the blind man who was rejected by the crowd in Jericho. Now, it doesn't say, I don't believe in this one. It does not. It does not say the word compassion, but just understand this when I read it. Be quiet, many of the people yelled at him. As he was crying out for the Lord, Lord, please help me, all the crowd said, be quiet. Be quiet. But he only shouted louder, Son of David, have mercy on me. When Jesus heard him, he stopped and said, tell him to come here. So they called the blind man. Cheer up, they said. Come on, he's calling you. See, no one else in that story there seemed like they were moved with any sort of compassion. Matter of fact, they instead said, no, he's ours. Shut up. They told him, stop talking. He's not stopping for you. You're not worth his time. And instead, Jesus stops dead in his tracks and says, bring him to me. Bring him to me. Because Jesus was moved with compassion for his people. When you cry out, God hears you. When you cry out, God acknowledges you. And when you cry out, God is moved with compassion for you. Because God loves you. God is love. That is what he is. That is who he is. He is always moved with compassion for his creation. And he commands us to do likewise and be moved with compassion for his creation. And Luke 10:25 through 37 is where we're going to be today. Luke 10:25 through 37. Verse 25 says, and behold, a lawyer stood up to him. Wow, that was rough. And behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, what is written in the law? How do you read it? And he answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, you have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, and who is my neighbor? We're going to stop there for a second. Who is my neighbor? So the real first thing that we need to understand as we're going through Scripture today is, who is your neighbor? Who is your neighbor? Is it your legitimate neighbor that lives right next door to you, that you see hedging their bushes or whatever they're doing over there? Staring at you creepily, depends on what kind of neighbor you have. We all have different ones. But whoever your neighbor is, he says, but who is my neighbor? Is it the people next to me? Is it my family? Is it the people that are in close relation with me? Is it the people I work with, that I'm around? Surely the people of faith and high positions, they must know who their neighbor is. That must be what he's thinking in this moment. Like, think about that. But who is my neighbor? As he's thinking about that, that tells you that if he knew that, what that tells you is that the people who taught him that didn't give him enough direction so that he even understood what he was taught. He knew I was supposed to love my neighbor as myself, but who actually is my neighbor? Interesting. And so Jesus then goes on to tell a story. And he replies, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. All right, let's phrase this as best as we can. I really need Zach. Can you come here real quick just for a second? I didn't even ask him beforehand. I don't really care. All right, stop right there. Okay, Zach is the man that was traveling, okay? He's hurt, he's beat, he's been robbed, he has nothing left to his name, he's been stripped down, so he's probably, in this time, naked, and he looks miserable and beat. He's bloodied, all those things are happening. What this text is saying is that the priest was a man who was walking down and seen Zach and went, oh, all right, Jericho, here I come. And he just walks down a different path. Okay, stay right there, Zach, just for another minute. I'm going to keep embarrassing you. And so he walks down a different path. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, he also was walking down, and he sees Zach, and he probably thinks to himself, oh, man, that's rough. All right. Ouch. I feel for that guy. But let's be honest. Think about this. How often in our own lives do we see people walk up and we think this, ooh, that probably hurt, and then did this? Seriously, be self-reflective. I know it's funny, but think about it. How many times on the side of the road when I seen somebody broke down do I go up and say, wow, their tire's gone? How many times do I walk by and I see somebody who's standing there and they're having a hard time with their luggage, or they're having a hard time with their groceries, and I go, oh, they got that. They gonna get that. They okay. Think about it. In your daily life, in the history of your life, how many times have we walked up and said, all right, and just walked the other way? You're good. You sit down now. I would argue that that's often. I would argue that most of us have at least, and I am trying to give as generous as I can. I would say most of us at least have an opportunity like that once a week. At least. Some of us every day. Some of us multiple times a day. Depends on how much you get out and about. If you're just sitting at home, you're probably not going to get anywhere. But if you're out and about, think about that. How many times do we see that? And how many times, when I'm even saying this right now, can you think in your own mind and say, I was the priest and the Levite and turned the other way? I've been the priest and the Levite plenty of times. A lot of the times. The one thing that Hannah and I had started to change in our life, obviously, listen, know the situation. Know the situation. Be willing to step in, but know the situation, right? If I see a car wreck and I see firefighters using the jaws of life and all those things, I'm not going to get out of my car and walk up and say, I got this, buddy. I can open that door for you. I'm not, know the room. Come on. I'm not saying that. But the one thing Hannah and I have changed when it comes to that is when we see, honestly, anytime I see typically an ambulance drive by, I typically stop and I pray. I stop what I'm doing and I pray for the person. Or for wherever that ambulance is going, I don't care why, but I want to pray and make sure that the Lord's protection is over that ambulance. And so we had to change that in our life. But there's so many times where I used to drive by car wrecks and I'd go, oh, wow, and just kept driving. Didn't think about it again after that one. I just went, wow, that probably hurt some. I remember the worst instance I can remember off the top of my head. Hannah and I were driving to camp a year ago. I think it was a year ago. And we were in Columbus. And there's this area where 670 connects to 270. Some of us are familiar with Columbus. There was a tanker that flipped over the bridge and fell onto 670's exit ramp and exploded. And I mean a huge fire. You could see it throughout the whole city. It was huge. and we had the privilege of driving right by it. And we could see this thing up in flames. There's like 7 fire trucks there. They're all trying to put it out. The guy did die, obviously. I wouldn't expect someone to probably live through that. And the guy did die. But I remember in that moment, as Hannah and I seen it, we were like, oh my gosh, like we were moved with so much compassion in that moment. We did everything we could. We just immediately started to pray and make sure that we prayed for that person. But I'm not trying to say, like, hey, if you don't pray for people, while you're driving on the side of the road, you're bad or anything like that. I'm just saying we need to know our situation, know our limitations, but be willing to always walk down the same road we're on. Don't take a detour because it's inconvenient for your time. We're so dedicated to our schedules in life that we get completely off track. Okay? We say, I would rather go the long way instead of helping that person. I'd rather go around them instead of actually, clearly, there's a chance that possibly God put this person in my path. This might be an opportunity for the Lord to work, and I choose that I'm going to go around it. There's this book, I'm kind of going off track a little bit, but there's this book called The Case for Christ. Some of us may have read it. It's by Lee Strobel. The young adults, we actually watched it at a movie night a couple of weeks ago. And The Case for Christ has this, it's an atheist family. They're a bunch of journalists. They write for not the New York Times, but something in Boston, whatever the thing is there. And so he's a writer for the newspaper and all those things. They're atheists and all that. And they're out to eat, and their daughter has a peanut allergy, and they told the waiter that, and the waiter must have not heard it or whatever, and she had peanuts in her ice cream or something that she was eating, and she starts to choke. Her throat swells up, and she's like dying right there on the floor. There was another woman who was a nurse who was a follower of Jesus who immediately comes over and she helps out the daughter. Oh, I'm sorry. I got this all wrong. She's not allergic. She was just choking. But she comes to help out the daughter, and she gets the thing out of her throat, and she's breathing, and she's okay again. And then she uses the opportunity to then witness to the mom. Now, she didn't just say, do you know Jesus? This wouldn't have happened. She looks at her, and she says, thank you so much. I can't believe you would help me. And she said, it's all the Lord, honey. We were going to a different restaurant, but I felt like I needed to be here tonight. And so I ate here, and then I seen this, and I had to take action. So I believe that God put me here for you. Drops that, leaves, but leaves her contact information, and then the atheist mom calls her like a day later, and then they have a whole conversation, and then she comes to church, and then she gets saved, and it ends up becoming an uphill battle. But eventually they all become saved, and the guy writes a book confirming, using evidence and things like that to prove the resurrection of Jesus Christ through documentation and historians. And so, but going through all that, she took the opportunity in a moment, and an entire family got saved from it. Now, I'm not saying, hey, we only do things so that then people will know Jesus. I'm saying we become moved with compassion that says, I'm not going to go out of my way to go do something else. I'm going to continue to go the direction of where God has placed me. If there's somebody there, I'm going to stop for them. I'm going to love on them. I'm not going to be like the priest and the Levite. We always think about this story, and we think about how selfish and obnoxious these people are, but we do it in our daily lives every day. We do. It just may not be as big. Obviously, I feel like most of us, if we seen somebody stripped down and beat and looked like they're lifeless, most of us would probably stop. But that was a very over-exaggerated situation. There is much smaller but very meaningful situations to that person every single day. That person needs someone to be moved with compassion to love on them. Are we going to be moved with compassion like our King commands and like our King was? Verse 33 says, but a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. As he journeyed, he's on the same road the priest was on. He's on the same road the Levite was on. And as he journeys and he sees Zach beat up and stripped and just miserable and dying on the side of the road, and he stops as he's moved with compassion. Clearly, something here tells us that Jesus wants us to know things about compassion. Verse 34 said, he went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And so think about this. Does any of this seem convenient for the Samaritan? None of it. None of it seems convenient for the Samaritan. Think about it. He's on a schedule. He's on his own time. He's got something he's doing, okay? He's clearly going to town for a reason. And so he's on his way, and who knows? It doesn't talk about it. What if he has a family waiting for him at home? What if he's got other things going on? What if he's dying? What if he needs help? It doesn't talk about any of those things. There's a million situations, so there's never a good enough excuse. There's not. Jesus didn't leave room for an excuse. He comes up to him, he stops, he helps bandage him up, and then he goes an extra mile and puts him on his own animal. He puts him on his own, whatever animal he had at the time, a colt or whatever, and he puts him on it. And then what does that mean? He walks with the animal and the man on the back of the animal to the town. And then when he gets to the town, it says this. And the next day he took out 2 denarii, and he gave them to the innkeeper, saying, "Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back." Which of these 3 do you think proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, "The one who showed him mercy." And Jesus said to him, "You go and do likewise." So all this happens. He gets him to the inn and all those things. And then, listen, now it's time. He's got a schedule he's got to get back onto, okay? But he even went the extra mile and said, "Hey, look at my friend over there. Can you take care of him? Can you help him? I'll pay you. I'll do whatever it takes. I want you to take care of him because he's loved by God. He is still a child of God, and he needs to be protected and okay? I don't want him to think about a job. I don't want him to think about money. I don't want to think about how to repay you or any of those things. I got that. I'll do all that for you. I will pay for it, okay? I just want him to be loved and taken care of until he can be back on his feet." And then he left. He showed him compassion with everything he had. And he did it so that he can serve and love on someone who needed Jesus the most. He was moved with compassion and wanted him to be healthy and okay. Borders do not define your neighbor. Distance doesn't limit your love. Love people beyond the world's excuses. Borders don't define your neighbor. Okay? So when he asks, "Who's my neighbor?" everyone is your neighbor. Everyone that is still alive above the ground and next to you is your neighbor. That is what it's saying. Everyone around you is your neighbor. Borders don't define that. Distance doesn't limit your love. Just because you're so far away from them doesn't limit what you can do for them. You can still love on them. Love people beyond what the world tells you is an excuse. The world will try to make excuses for why you don't love certain people. Oh, they did that. I can't love that person. That's nasty. That's dirty. That's wrong. I need to hate that person. The world will try to make up excuses. You got a lot of stuff going on in your life. You had some issues this week. Some things happened. Some things are going on. You can't love that person right now. You're not even complete and whole yourself. So how can you love on that person? The world tried to make excuses so that you cannot do the very thing Jesus asked you to do. All the time. That's why it's called an excuse. Do not let the world's excuses limit your abilities. As Jesus said, the one who showed him mercy. I'm going to try to speed up here because we're getting closer to time. Verse 5 in John had said, "I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." And then at the end of there in Luke, he says, "Now you go and do likewise." There is twice in there. That's very important. Twice. Not once, but twice. And just the 2 texts that we picked out today is that Jesus is not asking us to be a servant. Jesus is not asking us to have compassion. Jesus is commanding you to be a servant and commanding you to have compassion. It's not an option. If you remember a couple weeks ago, we talked about, it was briefly, I talked about the whole Build-A-Bear theology, where we nitpick the things that we like from Jesus and we get rid of the things we don't like. That way we can make sure we make Jesus the way that we like him, and so we can feel more loved and more better about ourselves. This is what we're talking about. Jesus commands servanthood, and he commands compassion. He doesn't say you have an option. He doesn't say if you give more, all of a sudden you don't have to do those things. He doesn't say if you spend more time with him privately, you don't have to do those things. There's nothing that can outweigh the other. It's important. He says it's a must. It's a mandate. It's something you're supposed to do. People who love me love people. That's what he says. People who love me love people. He's not asking. He commanded the disciples, he commanded the lawyer by telling them, this is how you will inherit heaven. This is how you will inherit heaven. To love means to serve. To serve means to have compassion. To love means to serve. To serve means to have compassion. Through this, we point back to Jesus Christ. Through this, we point back to Jesus Christ. It's just like the story I just told you about the girl that was choking. It pointed back to Jesus in the end of everything. I'm not saying serve someone so that then you can serve them with a big old healthy gospel sandwich. Okay? Just because you serve them and help them, oh, well, I'm going to help this elderly woman carry her groceries, and I'm going to put it all in her car for her. And then when she shuts the door, I'm going to tap on the window till she rolls it down, and then I'm going to say, do you know Jesus? Didn't know. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm not saying take it as an opportunity so that then you can be obnoxious. Serve them, love on them. People will genuinely just have conversations because they love to be served. That is a natural thing. Don't we all? We love to be served. Listen, here's how much we love to be served. Our culture has created a reputation that when someone serves me, I'm expected to tip them money. Why? Because we like to be served. Worship team, you can come up. We like to be served to the point that then we created a reputation that I must then pay somebody for their service of serving me. All right? We love to be served. People naturally will converse over someone serving them. Use it as an opportunity in everything you do to point back to Jesus Christ. But it's by our obedience. I want you to understand that. So as much as compassion's there, it's by our obedience to this, okay, that we worship Christ. I don't know if anyone's ever told you that. I want to make sure I get this to you. Music is great. Singing is great. Having an awesome time of worship and praise and all those things at the beginning of service, great. Maybe in your daily life you're listening to worship every single day. Great. I'm not saying to stop any of those things, and those things are any less. But your actions, the things you do when you are obedient to Christ, will worship him ultimately. That is worship. Worship is giving my life and saying, Christ, I know you know better than me. I worship you through my actions, through my words, through societal standards of whether they're wrong or right. I will worship you because I will do what you have commanded of me. Our obedience is worship. Our compassion is worship. Our love is worship. Modeling your life off of Jesus Christ is worship. So it's through all this we worship Christ. Listen, singing songs and all those things are great. But if all you do is sing the song, you're not worshiping anybody. You're missing the whole point. Jesus loves to be praised. He loves to hear you cry out for him. But if it's all just because it's words on a screen and a beady tune, it's for nothing. It's not for Christ. Worship him through everything you do. Worship him through your servanthood, your willingness, your access, your obedience to him. Worship him through that. Worship him. We're going to take a moment. We're going to do We Fall Down again. We're going to take a moment. And I made this commitment to you as a church. I don't have a direct thing that I'm going to call you to the altar for today. But I'm going to tell you something. We just ended with worship for a reason. Because I want us to take a moment for one song, and then we're going to do communion, and we're going to get out of here today. But I want us to take a moment here to worship our God. Beyond your words, worship Him with your body, your expressions, your actual love. Don't be worshiping, singing the songs, either raising your hands or sitting down, while the whole time as you're thinking about Taco Bell you're getting after service. And praying, and the only reason why you're praying is because you're hoping the lettuce doesn't get you. Worship Him because He is your Lord and Savior. Worship Him because He loves you. Worship Him because He has commanded you to do things that you're going to be obedient through. Worship Him for your love. So we're going to stand up, if you guys can stand with me. And however worship in your mind works, okay? When I was a youth pastor, what I used to do for our youth students, listen, when they stood in rows, all they did was sit there and kick each other and touch each other and all those goofy things that annoys the crap out of every youth pastor on the planet that makes you just want to strangle a kid. All those things happen. And so what I started doing, and what I stopped doing, is I stopped having them just stand in rows of chairs. Instead, what we told them is I said, this room is accessible for your complete obedience and worship. I said, if you want to use the altar, use the altar. If you want to go stand in the back of the room, stand in the back of the room. If you want to stand to the sides, if you want to be by yourself and sit on the ground, sit on your face, or sit crisscross applesauce, be on your knees. Whatever you want to do, the room is accessible for your form of worship, and I want you to worship, but what I want you to not do is stand and sit next to each other. I said, if I see you near each other, I'm going to kick you. Now, I'm not going to kick anybody today, and I'm not saying I'm condemning you if you are in a row, but what I'm saying is give God complete access to this space. Can we lower the lights? Give God complete access to your heart. Be obedient to what He has asked of you. Be loving and compassionate and serving. Be humble enough to acknowledge that people's opinions and thoughts of you don't matter. They don't outweigh anything. Because the consequence of not being obedient in worship is the consequence of never knowing Jesus and never making it to heaven. Are you telling me that your embarrassment or your worry about other people outweighs heaven? It doesn't. Worship Jesus with everything you have. So we're going to sing We Fall Down one more time. And I am telling you as a church and as your pastor, never think that you don't have complete free access to this space. Do what you need to get to Jesus. If that's the altar, if that's the aisle, if that's sitting down, crisscross applesauce, or being on your knees or on your face, or whatever form of worship is what you need in the moment, seek Jesus no matter the cost, because nothing is greater than access to the kingdom of heaven. Nothing is greater than knowing Jesus as your Lord and Savior. So we're going to sing it today together.